Well, in response to that, then Kamala Harris saying no one can sit on the sidelines in this year's presidential election as she capped a day of campaigning across the largest city in the crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania. We are focused on the future and we're focused on the needs of the American people, she said, as opposed to Donald Trump, who spends full time looking in the mirror, focused on himself. Harris singling out young voters, praising them for being rightly impatient for change, and she told the audience that there's too much at stake. She also spoke about one of her key subjects, that of abortion.
You who right now know fewer rights than your mothers and grandmothers understand the importance of fighting for the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. And this is why I love you, young leaders who are here, because for you, this is not theoretical. This is not political. This is not about some debate. It is about your lived experience.
Kamala Harris there. Well, Doug Herbert from our International Affairs desk, our International Affairs commentator, is joining me here on set. Doug, let's talk about Donald Trump, first of all. He's held that rally in New York City. It's the bluest of blue states. Why on earth did he hold it there?
Bluest of blue cities in one of the bluest states. What's he doing there? Especially in a state where New Yorkers, time and again, whenever he shows up, whether it's in court or somewhere else or just visiting his Trump Tower, he's always heckled with "New York hates you." That is literally the sentiment of New Yorkers, with the exception of Staten Island, another borough, which we could talk about another day. But they hate him in New York. So what's he doing? One of this is about his ego, about his narcissism. Let's say it like it is. He wants to snub his nose at the New York establishment, the New York elite, all the political establishment that say New York, his hometown, he was born in Queens, New York, isn't his. He has no right even showing up there. So this is his way of saying, not only am I going to show up in New York, but I am going to show up in my hometown in the biggest, splashiest of ways at its biggest, baddest venue, Madison Square Garden, the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Pack it in, tens of thousands of people. This was about getting a lot of media attention, which we know Donald Trump, he's a showman at heart. This is what he loves. It's his way, like I said, really in your face of New York. Not only am I showing up, I'm going to do it in style, and I'm going to draw massive crowds to the heart of Manhattan. He's also doing it for money. His campaign coffers pale in comparison to those of Kamala Harris, especially in this end game of the campaign. We know that they've both splashed out hundreds of millions of dollars in the past couple of months on ads and rallies and so on and so forth. But Donald Trump actually charged, if you wanted a VIP ticket for an extraordinary MAGA event, you paid up almost $1 million. Not all the people at that rally were paying $1 million. No, they were just spectators. But the people, the top rung, almost $1 million. So trying to fill up those campaign coffers. He needs it for his final blitz across battlegrounds. And finally, New York does have, outside of New York City, there are lots of Republican and Republican-leaning counties in upstate New York. And in the 2022 midterms, New York actually had quite a few districts swinging Republican. Donald Trump is there to help down-ticket Republicans. Now, critics might say, as much as Donald Trump ever really wants to help anyone else, they might revert back to my first explanation. He's there for himself. He's there for his ego. Every campaigner, everyone wants to have their one sort of own event, even if New York doesn't seem like a logical choice for a final week rally. This is a choice he wanted to make for his own reasons, to be seen, to be heard, again, in the biggest venue there is.
Jessica Mazurier talks in her report about the dark historic parallels in the venue picked there. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, the parallels are quite clear. Madison Square Garden, it's true, over the years, is one of the biggest, most famous venues in New York. It has hosted Marilyn Monroe sung Happy Birthday to JFK there in 1962. And then we also had FDR gave some speeches there in the 30s. But this, look at your screens, is what we're talking about today. There was a notorious, no other word to use, notorious pro-Nazi rally. Officially, it was called the Pro-American Rally, held in February, as you can see the date there, 20th, 1939. It was sponsored by a German-American organization on the eve of the war, the Bund, it was called. It was outright, explicitly pro-Hitler, pro-fascist. The speakers tirades against migrants, migrant invasions, but specifically against Jews. It had a very anti-Semitic bent, this pro-Nazi rally. Jews were blamed for stealing the jobs of true Americans, real Americans. Let's not forget that at yesterday's rally at Madison Square Garden, we heard Stephen Miller, one of the top advisors and aides to Donald Trump, basically talking about America for Americans. You don't have to go that far to connect the dots between that 1939 Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden and Trump. It's not going out on a limb, on an editorial limb. It's not editorializing even. There are clear historical parallels. But beyond that, look, at this rally, this was shot through, infused with the darkest, most virulent aspects of what has made the MAGA movement the MAGA movement. The misogyny, that is the sexism, the overt racism, and just the calling out of the so-called enemy within. Donald Trump, once again, the enemy within is basically Americans who dare to criticize Trump and his allies. These are people that he has vowed to prosecute and to go after. A comic, I will just note, kicked off this rally at Madison Square Garden and has gotten a lot of blowback, even from the Trump campaign, for basically calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, for calling out a black man in the audience with a reference to a watermelon, and for calling Jews cheap and Palestinians rock throwers. That was just the warm-up act. That's what this rally was about.
Finally, Doug, what about Kamala Harris? Key city in a key state?
Yeah, Philadelphia. You don't get too much key. If Pennsylvania is the mother of all battleground states, as we keep saying time and again, and it is, it has 19 electoral votes, it is crucial, it is the path to victory. You can't lose it and have a clear path, at least if you're Kamala Harris. Philadelphia, it went 81% for Joe Biden in 2020, 81%. But more importantly, it has two demographic groups that she desperately needs because Trump has been seen by the polls as eating into margins among both blacks, who are nearly 40% of Philadelphia's population, and among Latinos, who are 15% of Philadelphia's population, which is why she spent her day on Sunday while Trump was having his immigrant bashing rally at Madison Square Garden. She spent the day going to a church, a bookstore, black-owned, predominantly black church, black-owned bookstore, a barbershop, a black barbershop, where she spoke to the clients there. And she ended the day, where did she end the day? She went to a restaurant, a Puerto Rican restaurant. So this really shows she was narrowly aiming at Philadelphia. Remember, Philadelphia is 10% of all the votes in Pennsylvania. Once again, going back to the idea, battleground state. A lot of people in her campaign feel, and she said it herself yesterday, the path to the White House goes through Philadelphia. She can lose Philadelphia and still get Pennsylvania, but it's a lot harder, Stuart. That's why she's been really homing in on her message, and crucial with 9 days left to Election Day in Philadelphia.